his arms across his chest. What's the story? And what do we have to make? Today we're going to combine history with storytelling. We're going to reenact George Washington crossing the Delaware with his troops. I looked at Matthew and the other boys. Their frowns turned to smiles at the mention of George Washington and his troops. While reaching into the story box, I looked around the group. Who can think of something we might want to make for our journey across the river? I know, Charlie shouted. We need boats. Matthew jabbed the younger boy with his elbow. We can't build boats, Charlie. I stood and motioned to Charlie. I think we can form some pretend boats with chairs. Would you like to take charge of the boats for us, Charlie? He bobbed his head and smiled. Want to help, Matthew? Though I hadn't expected him to agree, Matthew jumped to his feet and pulled a chair to the far side of the room. Let's do it over here. Once the boys were busy arranging chairs, I pulled a sheaf of newspapers from the story box. We can make tricorn hats out of the newspaper, and I brought some butcher paper we can paint blue for the water. I tapped my chin. I don't know what we can use to create make-believe ice in the water. Any ideas? I glanced around the room. Bertie waved toward the dining room. We can lump some of the towels and napkins. The other girls applauded her suggestion, and soon the children were hard at work creating the mock scene. Once the scene was completed, I related the story of how General Washington had rallied his men and how in the freezing weather they'd successfully crossed the frigid waters. When I finished explaining the history, I looked up at the group of boys, all of them eager to participate in acting out the story. Who would like to play George Washington? To my surprise, Matthew motioned to Charlie. I think it should be Charlie. He's the one who figured out how to make the chairs into boats. My heart swelled at Matthew's suggestion. He'd suggested Charlie instead of himself for the major role. Such a thing wouldn't have happened a year ago. But throughout the past year, with a bit of coaching and encouragement, Matthew had made strides in the right direction. Moments later, I pulled him aside. I'm proud of you, Matthew. His cheeks flamed red from the praise, and he ducked his head. He deserved it. I squeezed his shoulder. Why don't you take charge of the second boat? Nodding, Matthew hurried forward and motioned for several of the children to join him. These slight modifications in the children's behavior had become a measuring stick for me. When I saw changes for the good, it confirmed that this orphanage was where I was meant to teach. At the time I'd accepted the job, my parents had expressed concern. They'd anticipated that upon completion of my education, I would accept a position at a finishing school for a year or two, and then marry. Instead, I'd returned home, accepted a post at the orphanage school, and remained single, at least for the present. If Nathan Woodward had his way, we'd already be married. Nathan had proved to be the persistent sort. My father said that was a good thing, but I wasn't so sure. At times I thought him too impatient, too eager, a bit too sure of himself, and a bit too sure of me as well. He never seemed to doubt that we would one day marry, but I remained uncertain. I had yet to sense the stomach flips and heart flutters my girlfriends spoke of experiencing when they'd fallen in love. How does this look, Miss Rhoder? Bertie had scrunched frayed white napkins into clumps and placed them on the blue butcher paper. Henry says they don't look like ice, but I told him he's supposed to use his imagination. She inched closer to my side and peered at me with eyes nearly the same shade of blue as my own. The chairs don't look like boats either. How come Henry didn't say that to Charlie or Matthew? Let's overlook what he said for today. I don't think he meant to hurt your feelings. Although Bertie didn't appear convinced, she agreed. Everyone, put on your hats and gather at the shoreline. Henry perched his small hands on his hips